Charles Valley Groundwater Authority meeting, Board of Directors special meeting agenda for Thursday, October 29th. In accordance with the evolving public health declarations, we are temporarily limiting public attendance to virtual alternatives only. We look to get back to physical attendance as soon as possible, and I'm looking forward to that. Let's start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. Scott, if you'd lead us with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Please remain standing for a moment of prayer, silence, or meditation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fantastic. Thank you. Let's have a roll call.
Vice Chair Heyman.
Present.
Chairman Gleason.
Here.
Director Kaczynski.
Here.
Director Page. Director Vallejo.
Present.
Hi, John. Okay. Let's move to public comments. This time is reserved for the public to address the board on matters not on the agenda. No action will be taken on non-agenda items unless authorized by law. Comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Moving to callers for public comment. Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. We'll move on from public comments to item number 3, Defense Communities Infrastructure Program, DCIP Implementation Guidelines, Letter of Support. And throw that over to Don.
So there's a staff report that was provided by Capital Core Group in your board packet, and I believe Jeff Simonetti is on the phone to explain what the request is for this agenda item.
Thank you, Don. Jeff, over to you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Loud and clear.
Good. All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. The letter before you relates to the Defense Community Infrastructure Program, and particularly the criteria related to that. So as you will recall, in our funding sources strategic plan from last year, we identified the Defense Community Infrastructure Program as a potential area that could be used for both the infrastructure projects for the imported water resources, as well as potentially for the wastewater treatment plant within the city. And I know there's been discussions recently about that at the last board meeting. This year, in terms of the fiscal year 20 outlays, the Office of Economic Adjustment, which provides the judgment for which programs would move forward and which applications would move forward, changed around the priorities from originally it was designed as having resiliency projects and hard infrastructure like the ones that we're looking to implement as would be priority. In this year, the Office of Economic Adjustment changed that priority around and put military family quality of life as a top priority. So as a result, every resiliency project that applied and made an application to the DCIP in fiscal year 20 did not receive funding. As a result, in this new NDAA for fiscal year 21, for new applications to the DCIP, the amendments that we have before you and the letter of recommendation that we're recommending that you sign would put the amendments in place that would say to make resiliency projects as the #1 criterion for the Office of Economic Adjustment to consider DCIP applications. And we think that would be helpful, as I mentioned, for both the imported water infrastructure projects as well as if the city of Ridgecrest, for example, would consider an application for the wastewater treatment plant. And we are recommending that you sign the letter of support for that, and as I mentioned, hopefully that will move forward in this year's NDAA. And the reason why we need this as well is that this is a conferenceable item. The language is only within the House version of the NDAA, not in the Senate version. So we'll have to go to conference committee to get settled out, and we're hoping, like I said, we can be able to support that. Be happy to answer any questions beyond that.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Before we go to the board for questions, let's open it to the public, see if the public has any comments. Okay, I'm getting the all clear from Gary. Thank you very much. Let's bring it back to the board for comments and construction comments. Anything? I got a bunch. You got any questions, Scott? Well, let me start off. Maybe they'll spur on some thoughts. Jeff, I appreciate all you're doing. When you say this is conferenceable, what I take that to mean is that the language has been approved in the House, and I think you said it's not been approved in the Senate version. And so what are the odds, or what are the chances, or what are our percentages, or what do we need to do to optimize to, other than this letter, to get that language corrected in conference?
So it's not that it hasn't been it has been approved in the House. It's non-existent in the Senate version. So when they come back into conference committee, the areas that either have different language or there's no language in one versus another, that's where the conference committee will work out those two differences. The other thing that we have been doing is talking to some of the other defense communities that were in the Tier 2 resiliency projects that were not approved. And there's a lot of groundswell there of other communities that feel the same way about putting resiliency up to the forefront. So continuing to talk to them, and as well as making sure our own local delegations, so Representative Cook and Representative McCarthy, know, and we've made them aware that this is a priority, but making sure that our elected officials on the board as well recognize that this is a priority and express that to our elected officials.
Jeff, how did it change away from being a priority from resiliency and readiness to quality of life? When did that change happen?
So that change happened earlier this year when the DCIP program was appropriated in last year's NDAA. They did not make mention as to what order that the criteria would be. So the original intent of that bill always was, at least amongst the elected officials, that it would be like I said, resiliency project. So hard infrastructure, water, wastewater treatment, those types of things that help make a base more resilient. The bill language did not specify the order of those criteria. They left it up to the Office of Economic Adjustment to make that criteria, or make the order of the criteria. So it changed when the Office of Economic Adjustment made the criteria back earlier this year.
So Jeff, I hear I read your staff report. Go ahead, keep going.
And so, so the point of this is that now we're putting statutory language. The amendments that Representative Garamendi is moving forward would put statutory language in there to say this is the order of priority that you will judge next year's projects by. So
right.
It's making that specificity and making that change.
Thanks. This is going to get my support. I just got a couple other questions for you. There's $50 million on the table here that we can qualify for a piece or part of that, and we're going to have to compete for that. And what I want you to articulate in your own words and your own perspective is how far behind the 8 ball are we today in qualifying for these programs? While we fritter away our time talking about nonsense, we're not moving forward at a clip sufficient to solve our problem. And so what do we have to do? How far behind are we in qualifying for these DSIP programs?
So in terms of the imported water infrastructure, we have determined that the project will be eligible once it has determined a route and also made a little bit further movement towards doing design and engineering. So that will be eligible once those things happen. Now, in terms of the wastewater treatment plant, because I know that, as I mentioned, there's the last board meeting, there's been discussion related to how that's going to tie into the program. That it's my understanding that since that is either ready for construction, that would be eligible to make a DCIP grant. So it depends on which project.
Okay, so what I want to do is I want to build a success. I want to get success, and I want to get it moving as quickly as possible. We have limited options. I think that I think we would all agree that designing, selecting a project to put forward for DCIP competition is difficult to do right now because of the politics involved with the implications of whatever project we pick will have on our friends to the north or our friends to the south, and we may be digging holes that we don't necessarily want to dig at the present time. So I want to move the ball, and I'm thinking that perhaps it's in our best interest to focus on a design project for the water treatment facility, that aspect of it, because it's harmless. Our friends in Inyo will readily agree that that is a sufficient project to meet the demands or the needs of DCIP and give us time to work issues that are satisfactory to them and to us. So if my logic is correct in terms of the bigger picture, Jeff, let me know. If it's not, correct me. But I think we should. There's a good reason for us to focus on getting a shovel-ready project design ready to go and compete as soon as possible. And if that's true, what are the timelines for doing that? Thanks.
Sure. Okay. And obviously, yeah, it's a policy decision as to which project you'd want to forward first. But yes, you are correct on the timeline in terms of the wastewater treatment plant, because it's further along in both the design and permitting process. Yes, that would be. It's my understanding that it's far enough along that it would be eligible for making an application for DCIP next year. So with that being said, if the DCIP application process follows the same timeline as it did this year, the guidelines for the criteria went out, I believe, in March of this year. They had either a 45 or 60-day comment window, and then applications for the DCIP program were accepted in May. And so if they follow the same timeline, it would be in spring of next year. And they make a decision before the fiscal year. So they made the final decision on applications in the middle of September.
Thank you, Jeff. Steve Johnson, are you on board?
Yes, sir, I am.
Steve, what are your thoughts about, or do you have any thoughts about what we're talking about? Is it possible to meet the timelines required for DCIP with a shovel-ready project with regard to, and possibly working it with the wastewater treatment facility? Do you think that's a possibility?
Mick, I think your suggestion, this is just my view, I haven't heard this concept before, but I think your suggestion is a very good one. I think that the city is much farther along than we are, and the money is going to be spent, for the basin and for recycled water, which we all need, and it'll help supply water to the basin. Realistically, the approach, the outline, and that's as far as we've got. We do have an outline on trying to take the staff through the process of selecting a imported water project between the two that we have identified, and bringing that to the board and have the board make a selection. The process, realistically, is going to take a little time, and we haven't even started it yet. So, if there is a way for us to get on board for funding for the basin, I think it's a good idea, yes.
Thank you, Steve. John Vallejo, do you have any thoughts about what we're talking about?
Supervisor Gleason, I think your thought is a very good one, and I think it's an important thing to get as much excess funding or outside funding to any water resiliency issues that we can in the basin. So directing this application towards the city's recycled water plant, I think, is a great idea.
So what I'm thinking about doing is, I know I would like to have, Dawn, I would like to have you bring up to the November meeting a conversation, an agenda item, so that we can complete this conversation in terms of assigning, tasking either our new general manager or our water resource manager or whoever we need to assign to make sure that we have a a DCIP project ready to go for the 21-22 year, which Jeff, excuse me, says I think we need to have that ready by March. And I would like your thoughts, gentlemen, on what you think of that course of action. Scott.
So, yeah, this is Councilman Haven, or Director Haven. So I'm in favor of several things, Jeff. One being getting that language before the NDAA and getting us into the program. And secondly, I think you answered my question. So if that's makes it through the different processes, so we're looking at 2021 as the eligible timeframes to get things submitted. That's correct? In May, before May of next year?
Yeah, and what I'll do is this afternoon I'll go back and I'll put together a quick memo that goes and gives the exact dates on when those applications were due. But yes, it was around the March timeframe that they put the criteria, and then it was in either late April or early May that the applications were due. And I'm not sure if they're going to follow that same timeline, but it's going to be generally around then.
Okay, and I like the idea of moving forward with the wastewater treatment project. So would we need to have an accelerated design process in hand for the application submittal?
So I'm not sure how far you guys are along in terms of the design side, but yeah, what they want to see is that if we give you a grant, let's say for fiscal year that would be 21-22, that you would be able to build the component of what you have within that year. So I don't think that the engineering has to be fully finalized by that point, by the point that you make the application, but they want you to be able to demonstrate that if you've got if you get this application, that you would be able to spend and put that money on the ground within the fiscal year that we give it to you.
Okay.
So, Jeff, I got a follow-up question, a couple of them here real quick. Politics.
Sure.
So we're kind of like revolving around, we want to get something moving. There's a lot of money there that we need. We have a lot of work. We think we may have an opportunity here with this wastewater treatment. We don't know. It may turn out, it may not. But let's say that we're progressing and the city and the Navy are everything looking good, and we have a shovel-ready project, and we're ready to go compete for DCIP. My question is politics. What do we do now? I see that Representative Cook is a member of the House Armed Services Committee, and that he's going to be a member of this board next year at this time. In 2 months, he'll be a member of this board. So how do we position ourselves politically? What do we have to do to get from here to there to win, not just to compete, but to win for the DCIP funding? What do we got to do?
Yeah, so that's a good question. And actually, the Association of Defense Communities earlier this month had a forum, and I'll also, let me see if I can dig up the link on that. Because they did a forum on the DCIP application process and had all of the members of the selection committee on that Zoom call. It was very insightful. One of the things that they mentioned specifically was making sure two things: that you tell a good story about why your particular project is important and is going to help, whether it be resiliency or, in the instance of last year, military family quality of life. The second thing that they made mention that was very important for them to see was having a strong connection between the community and the base to show that you're pulling in the same direction. So I think it would be very helpful for us as we go through that process to make sure that we continue to coordinate with the command on base, so that they know what we're working on and that we can kind of pull in the same direction on that application.
Thanks, Jeff. We began that process with, we had a meeting, I think it was last week, maybe the week before, where I sat down with the new CO and we had a very nice, thorough conversation. I know that our team of lawyers is meeting with their lawyers and are having very positive communication. So things are coming together nicely to align us into a common desire to import water, and those waters are becoming clearer and clearer as we move along. So I think we're going to do that. I think we're going to be able to achieve that. I think everything's looking pretty good. So I'm eager to see your success, Jeff. I'm eager, and I know that there's a difference between competing and winning, and I want to win that. I just don't want to compete for it and look good. I want to actually win. So if we need members of this board next year to be making trips to D.C., we're going to do whatever we have to do to win. So with that, if there anybody? Yes, please.
Jeff, did you get a chance to look at the letter that we proposed sending from the Groundwater Authority? And if so, do you agree with the language in it? Is it strong enough? Is it where we need to be?
Yes, yes, I was able to read that. Yes, and I think that articulates the points where we need to be on making sure that we support that.
Great, because I'm in favor of that. And as far as I agree with Director Gleason's analysis that the quickest thing we can get shovel ready is probably the wastewater treatment plant. But I want to make sure in the long run we don't hold up on any other options that we need to look at for future ones. But we need to progress on that, and Director Gleason is right. May's right around the corner, so we need to move quickly. Thank you.
Okay.
But and that is a good point though, and don't lose sight of the imported water project too, because the good thing is that if everything moves forward as in the DCIP, there will be further potential appropriations in years even beyond next year. So there could be an opportunity to look at the imported water project further down the road for DCIP implementation as well.
Thank you, Jeff. Scott.
Yes, and Jeff, this is Dr. Heyman again. So I would like to see a follow-up on the imported water project and an order of events that we would need and timelines that we would need to meet so that we stay on top of that. And even though, like I said, we're focusing on the wastewater, that is still a very big, major point of, prospect that we need to really be working on too. So thank you.
A quick question for Jeff, Director.
Yeah.
If we actually had two projects ready to submit, we could submit two, couldn't we? I'm not saying we could be shovel ready for import, but I'm just saying, if the import one was ready as well, could that be submitted as well?
Yes, there were actually multiple cities that did that. I'm thinking of the town of Surf City, for example, near Camp Lejeune in North Carolina. I think they submitted either 3 or 4 applications to the DCIP. So yeah, you're able to do that.
That's all I asked. Thank you.
So Steve Johnson, your Christmas just went away. Sorry, pal.
That's okay. That's okay. It's important.
So is anybody else want to talk some more about this? Because I think this is important too. Are there any other questions, or are we're ready to? The vote is to receive and file, or what's the vote? Actually,
I believe that we probably. I'm just going to make a motion that we submit the letter as written.
Okay.
Exactly. So if you want me to clean it up a little bit, submit the letter considering Section 2861 of the Defense Community's Infrastructure Program as written.
Just second the motion so that I sign it.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second that I sign the letter that's drafted for to send. John, any final thoughts?
No, but do we need any further direction to prepare an application for, or at least begin preparing the application for the city's recycled water project?
Good point. John, you want to amend? Let's have. I want to refer to I want to make a reference or referral to bring back to the board at the November meeting a conversation of how we're going to work this particular issue with regard to the recycled water plant.
And I agree with that. I agree with that. I think that's a separate issue. I think what we're saying now is we want to send this letter off so we can get the wording or the priorities reset. So that's one issue. And then the other issue, I agree with you, Mr. Gleason, that we should arrange to bring this back in November to push along the recycled water project.
John, is that okay with you?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we weren't going to miss out on giving direction in that regard.
Good point. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion and a second.
Sure.
Let's have a roll call vote.
Chairman Gleason,
Yes.
this is Keith Lemieux.
Hi, Mr. Lemieux.
Hi. just for clarity, we've got we're prepared. Staff is preparing, and will present to you an agreement between the city and the GA for an option agreement for the recycled water based on the terms we described at the prior meeting. We're also preparing a resolution for the GA to adopt the recycled water program. So those should be available to discuss and approve hopefully in November.
Just what I want to do is adopt that problem. But okay, I'm looking forward to it, Keith. Thank you very much. We have a motion and a second. Let's have a roll call vote.
Vice Chair Heyman,
Aye.
Chairman Gleason.
Yes.
Director Kaczynski.
Yes.
Director Vallejo.
Aye.
Director Page.
Item number 4 is a board consideration and approval of submitting an expression of interest for the Table A entitlement from Montecito Water. Don, over to you.
So I received from Westwater Research a brochure, which is in your packet, that had information about a multi-year transfer opportunity for an entitlement of up to 3,300 acre feet of state water project Table A water. We did review this during our last staff call, and staff believes there's potential for this to provide a source to help us meet our needs for imported water. The timeline for communicating interest requires an expression of interest to be submitted to Westwater Research no later than November 6th of 2020. We did reach out to Westwater Research to see if there was a possibility of getting an extension. They have not responded, so I'm pretty sure that date is firm. A formal bidding process among the priority buyers is anticipated thereafter in early 2021, unless they receive what they call an outstanding offer, and I'll talk about that in just a second. The formal negotiations and completion of the definitive documents with the selected buyer are then planned for early to mid-2021. So in your packet, there's also the template for the expression of interest that is required, and it's pretty straightforward. There is one section, Section 7, where they do request that we provide the prices that we're willing to pay for the various allocations. And to be clear, this is for up to 3,300 acre feet, but again, it's subject to allocation. So there's a table A through J of 10% increments, and they're asking us to fill that in. Again, this doesn't really commit us to anything. It just is an expression of interest. At this point, I think this is one of the better. We talked to Steve Johnson during staff call. He saw value in this. I think if we want to go forward with this expression of interest, obviously I need Stetson's input, and we may need Capital Corps' as well to come up with realistic numbers to fill in that table to submit this. So again, staff reviewed it, and we think this is something worth at least submitting the letter expressing interest in it, and so that's our recommendation.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Let's open it up to the public for comment and review. Thank you very much. Nothing from the public. We'll close public hearing. I want to talk to Mr. Hall. Phil, I know you were online. You and I had talked earlier, and I wanted you to recap for us a input from Ms. Esposito. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So we received a letter comment about an hour ago from Amy Seinfeld, who's the attorney for Mojave Pistachio, and in it they make a couple comments. First, they say that they're interested in bringing imported water into the basin, but they don't want us to enter into this this expression of interest for the following reasons. First, they make a claim that one of the reasons we've done the replenishment fee as we have so far is to determine how much water we actually need to bring in. that is true. And she's saying because nobody has paid the fee, we don't know how much water is that we need to bring in. That is unfortunately not true. We do know that we do not have enough water right now to meet the domestic needs of this basin without an imported supply. So we do need import supply. We do need to be moving forward with that. Whether or not we need extra water for any ag or other uses that we don't currently consider our domestic uses is an open question that the replenishment fee and payment of the replenishment fee will answer. Second, they make a comment that it's speculative that we will have any money for these because they being Mojave, are suing us over the fee. True, they're suing us over the fee, but we need a fee to have this. We need a fee to pay for any import water. So we're moving forward there. They also make a claim that their lawsuits, I guess their claim here is that their lawsuits that should be resolved before we start looking at import water. That also doesn't really jive with any rational basis to what we would be doing. And I would also point out that part of their lawsuits and Amy's comments in the past have been that her client, Mojave Pistachio, is entitled to all of the basin's safe yield before the city of Ridgecrest, the community of the city of Ridgecrest, that is the water district, all those that are out there using it for domestic purposes would get any water. So, in essence, they have submitted a letter. I see no rational basis to not move forward with this based on their letter.
Thank you, Phil. Did I already open this up to the public? I did? I'm glad someone's on the ball here. Okay, so let's bring it back to the board. The public hearing is closed, and let's bring it back to the board for comment and consideration. Members, anybody?
Jeff, are you still online?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, I'm sure you're aware of this. Would I mind if I get your input on this?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think it's as Don mentioned, it's an expression of interest here. So, there's nothing that's binding about it. I would make two comments. The first one is that you keep in mind that this is a variable water resource. And just a little bit of background as to why Montecito is putting this water for sale is that they just entered recently into an agreement with the city of Santa Barbara to get desalination water, which obviously once that's up and running would be a firm supply. And if they have excess water in a given year as a result of that, they would have the ability to sell that excess water. So it's really up to the Montecito Water District as to how much water they would be giving out. So it's not something that would be a completely firm supply, but it would give an option. Second thing is, as Don mentioned, I think it's worthwhile that, and obviously it's a policy decision as to whether you want to move forward on this. But if it's something that you're going to move forward on, just I think it's worthwhile thinking about what that pricing structure might look like. Because even though it's certainly not a binding agreement, I'm guessing that they're going to be judging the worthiness of applications based on that pricing.
Thank you. Thank you, Jeff. One thing that I see is that the amount of water that might be available will depend on two things. One is the percentage allotted by the state water project, as well as what they may or may not receive from the desal. So it's really a what-if type thing, as I see it. It may be there, it may not be there, it could vary up and down any year, and so it could be all over the place. So it looks to me like Montecito's just trying to cover themselves, saying, hey, we got a sellable commodity here, and let's set ourselves up so if we have it, we can sell it. So again, I have no problem progressing with getting our name in the hat and talking about it, because I still feel it has a pretty long way to go. And again, there's a lot of what ifs in it, and you point out a couple of them. But I don't see a problem. I never see a problem of at least asking and starting to talk about it, because we're not committing to anything. So I think you've answered all my questions. Thanks, Jeff.
Anybody else? Scott.
Yes, Director Heyman. Is there any on the terms on the period of years? Are there any parameters as to how many, like minimum or maximum years?
Well, the way I read it, it was open-ended. I mean, they said 3 to 5, but they also implied that if you wanted to get permanent allocations, you could bid at that, and they would receive all types of bids.
And I believe that's correct. It did say 3 to 5, but they are open to other options.
Okay. And we're a long way from those types of negotiations. And I think the fact that they're saying if someone steps forward and say, we'll flat out give you this right now. So I think our chances are slim, but I think we'd be foolish not to at least throw our name in the hat.
So the initial item is just showing the interest in it. We're not putting into any
As I said
data
right,
within the
as it says in the
contract.
staff report, it's not a commitment. It's just an expression of interest. You're just saying, hey, we were interested. They'll take a look at it. They'll review it. I believe they interview the ones that they're interested in, and you submit an actual RFP. At that point, it's more formal. But at this point, it's just saying, hey, we're interested in talking to you.
Okay.
Chairman Gleason?
Yes, John, go ahead.
So the application for our interest appears to require us to input what we're willing to pay. I'm wondering, one, if that's the case, and two, are we concerned about that in terms of our negotiating position moving forward with this potential supplier or others if it becomes a public record and we're trying to, have essentially a real estate negotiation here or a property negotiation here? And then, if we are going to put in a number, how are we going to determine what that those numbers are?
Yeah, I don't know that I'm willing right now to put a number in because I don't understand the project. This is just me speaking personally. I don't know what you gentlemen think, but I'm not willing to define anything. All I know is we got to get our feet wet if we want to go swimming, and this is the way we do it. So my answer to your question, I don't know if someone has a better answer than me, but my answer is I'm not prepared to nail down any commitment or nail down any specifics yet. I just want to enter the ball game. I'm someone to throw the first pitch. Go ahead.
Jeff might be able to help here. Jeff, John has a good point that, if we sit here and put in what we would be willing to pay per acre foot, what does that do during negotiation times? Are we locking into that acre foot price, or are we free to negotiate it? Because it seems to me if they're going to make a decision to whittle down the winners, if that's what you would call it, that if you put in a really high acre foot price, but then all of a sudden you try to negotiate that lower, it may not happen. So I guess my question is, what does it mean by trying to put a rate in there? I agree with John. If we put a rate in there, are we committed to it? Is it negotiable? Or what happens with it?
So I would defer to the attorneys on the legality of whether it's binding or not. But the way it's described in the letter is saying that they're not binding until there are final documents. With that being said, at the same time, I'm guessing that they're going to be weighing applications based on what people are willing to pay. So I would assume that would be part of their consideration as to who to invite or to move forward in the next part of the process.
Director Gleason, this is Steve. Is it okay if I speak for a second?
Yes.
Okay. Just a quick thought, if I might. Everybody's going to be in the same boat that we are that are going to submit on this, so they're going to have the same questions we have. So we're not going to be any different than anybody else trying to figure out how to respond to this. And I'm thinking, at least I given some thought before, that we could work with certainly legal counsel, Phil on this, and any other legal counsel, and Don on this. And so obviously the board to approve it. But thinking I had on it was an expression of knowledge that we already have. A lot of work's been done on what the value of table A entitlement is. An expression in this response of we understand that there are certain restrictions and parameters associated with what they're offering, and just letting them know that the authority is in the business of negotiating a fair and marketable, market rate for the water that they're going to acquire. I think we'd let them know that we're in the game, but not overextend ourselves or come in so low that they just kick it to the side. Just to let them know that we have a knowledge of what the value is, and we're willing to negotiate a price based on real value and market price for that.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? I'm waiting for a
If
motion.
someone is proposing that we, come back to the board for approval on any pricing, which I think would be prudent, we're talking about a November 6th deadline here. Was that it, Don?
Right, the deadline to submit the expression of interest is November 6th, and again, we did ask if they could consider an extension, and I haven't received a response. I asked a week and a half ago. The response was probably not likely, but I didn't get a definitive no.
Okay, thank you. Obviously, we're going to rely on the experts in this, which is Steve and Capital Corps and legal, who knows what to put in here. But if we intend to put something in for this letter, bring it back to the board, we need to move pretty quick.
Is the intent, Steve, to put a number in there?
Chairman, if I may for a second.
Please.
So, I think we should just put in there, this would be my suggestion, submit as is, and instead of putting a price, put negotiated fair market value.
Yes.
Bingo. I agree with that completely.
And leave it at that at this stage.
My thought, too.
Okay, thank you very much. So we're not going to put a number in there. We're just going to submit an item of interest and move forward if we all vote on that. So I need a motion and a second and then a vote. And any other thoughts?
I'll make a motion to move forward with the letter of expressed interest with the added, as far as price, the fair market value. I just don't want to see us get into a big bidding war.
We have a motion. We have a second. Any other thoughts before we go to a vote? Hearing none, we'll vote. Roll call vote, please.
Vice Chair Hayman,
Aye.
Chairman Gleason,
Aye.
Director Kaczynski,
Aye.
Director Vallejo,
Aye.
Director Page.
Thank you. Let's go to closing comments before we retire to closed session. Anyone? Hearing none, I'm looking for a motion to retire to closed session.
Move to adjourn the open session.
Okay. We're adjourned and we're going to closed session. Thank you very much. That was pretty good. Thank you. The Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Association just met in closed session, and we have nothing to report out of closed session. So this public meeting is now officially closed.
Do you remember that movie Tombstone?
Yeah, great movie.
Where they said that God only knows what's going to happen if what's-his-name takes over this outfit?
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the largest, God only knows what will happen if the people thinking of